Secretary of State Antony Blinken and India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar are holding high-level talks in New Delhi. The aim of the meeting is to boost bilateral ties with India. In his opening remarks, Jaishankar highlighted that the two countries have shared interests and concerns. They will be working to ensure democratic stability in Afghanistan and peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. Blinken said that there is a greater imperative on coordination and cooperation today. Let's now listen in to the talks.
We're looking at it as the United States sees it. There is not a single major challenge that has an impact on the lives of our citizens, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's a changing climate, whether it's the disruptive impact of emerging technologies, that can be addressed by any one of us acting alone. There is a greater imperative than ever, I think, on cooperation, coordination, collaboration among countries, especially among countries who share basic perspectives, basic values, and basic interests. And that is certainly the case with the United States and India. I think we've seen over the last couple of decades a relationship that has grown stronger and deeper across multiple administrations in both of our countries, and President Biden's determination is to continue in exactly that direction, to grow it even stronger and even deeper. We have a lot on our agendas, and I think that's actually a reflection of the strength of the relationship as it exists already, and you've touched on many of them. So I look forward to getting down to work with you and your colleagues. Thank you.
I'm confident that the visit will be a very productive one and that the quality of our discussions will fully reflect the strength of our relationship. Our bilateral cooperation has vastly expanded in the last few years. They today cover virtually all domains of contemporary relevance. Our interests are shared, our concerns are similar, and our convergences are strong. Talks today will provide an updated direction to our colleagues to translate these into practical outcomes. Responding to the COVID pandemic has added new facets to our growing cooperation in an increasingly multipolar world. Peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific is as important for both of us as democratic stability in Afghanistan. Deepening the Quad as a collaborative platform is in our mutual interest, and we must work together even more closely on key contemporary challenges like terrorism, climate change, pandemics, and resilient supply chains. In democratic societies, it is also natural that legitimate concerns and people's aspirations will find expression, including in foreign policy. Our conversations on global issues in a rebalancing world would surely be richer from real exchanges of national experiences and historical perspectives.
A number of crucial issues will be discussed during the course of Blinken's visit. The fallout of the U.S. troop pullout from Afghanistan and the impact of territorial gains made by the Taliban will dominate discussions. Pakistan-sponsored terrorism and Indo-Pacific cooperation will also be on the agenda. The two sides are expected to explore ways and means to deepen collaboration on defense. This will cover policy exchanges, exercises, defense transfers, and technologies. India and the US are likely to take the Quad vaccine initiative forward. This is to enable the supply of vaccines produced in India from early 2022 to countries in the Indo-Pacific region. Earlier today, Blinken spoke with a group of civil society leaders. He said that the US and India share a commitment to democratic values, and it is part of the bedrock of our relationship and reflective of India's diverse society and history of harmony. Blinken will be meeting Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi later today. This is his first visit to India after Biden took charge. In March this year, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had visited India. In April, U.S. Special Envoy on Climate Change John Kerry also paid a visit to New Delhi. Well, our principal diplomatic correspondent, Sidhant Sibal, joining us live with more details. Good to see you, Sibal. Any information on what the two leaders have discussed? Of course, we know Afghanistan is going to dominate the agenda, right?
Well, yes, Afghanistan continues to dominate the agenda. In fact, at the statements, the opening statements of both the ministers when it was taking place earlier today, the Indian External Affairs Minister talked about the democratic stability in Afghanistan, where there are, of course, talks of power sharing between the Afghan government and Taliban. Doha talks is all about those conversations. And India is keen that there is a constitutional continuity when it comes to any kind of power sharing agreement, because a new setup, if it is put or imposed, it might create disruptions for a very fragile Afghan society which has been built over last 20 years. We know that both India and US are by and large are on the same page when it comes to the issue of Afghanistan. There have been ongoing conversations. In fact, the Indian External Affairs Minister met the US Special Envoy on Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, in Tashkent on the sidelines of the Uzbekistan Connectivity Summit. And there have been off and on a conversation happening on Afghanistan at several levels as well. In fact, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, also met the Indian National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, as well earlier today. And during that conversation as well, Afghanistan figured prominently on how both countries should go about on that issue, even as Taliban is making territorial gains. India's single focus is that US continues with the sustained pressure on Taliban, on Pakistan when it comes to their linkages with international terror groups and, of course, Taliban as well. We know that the Afghan president lashed out publicly in the presence of Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan in Uzbekistan at the Connectivity Summit, saying that tens of thousands of jihadis have crossed the international border into Afghanistan, and also talked about how the linkages there still exist between Islamabad and Taliban. So that remains a concerning issue, not only here in New Delhi, but also in Kabul. So nonetheless, Afghanistan is the dominating issue during this one-day-long visit of the US Secretary of State. In fact, behind me is the Indian Foreign Ministry, where there will be a press statement and question answers as well at 2:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And I do expect a lot of direct mention on Afghanistan, on the issue of cross-border terrorism, when both the ministers, the Indian External Affairs Minister, Dr. S Jaishankar, and the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, address the Indian media.
Well, Sibal, let's talk about what this means for India. Blinken has stressed on alliance with India during his remarks earlier in the day. What does this mean amid growing Chinese influence in the region?
Well, for India, it definitely means a lot in terms of this relationship, a much celebrated relationship. In fact, one thing that has emerged since morning is the shared values both United States and India have, including the address by the US Secretary of State with the civil society, where he talked about the independent media here, the independent judiciary. There are common things between the political structure in United States and, of course, India. That was a statement in which he lauded India a lot on its democratic values. And this is something that both countries have been talking about off and on. But how both countries work together amidst the Chinese aggressiveness is something which will be keenly noted, given the fact that India has been impacted by Chinese aggressiveness, especially at the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. We know Quad is something that four countries, India, US, Japan and Australia, are working on. In fact, this visit is expected to lay ground for the upcoming Quad in-person meeting of the leaders in Washington that's expected to take place perhaps by October. The Indian Prime Minister could go to US for this meeting. Already the virtual summit has already taken place, in which the key outcome was the vaccine initiative, the Quad vaccine initiative, under which India is at the heart in terms of manufacturing of vaccines, with US supplying raw material and, of course, financial capabilities of Australia and Japan. And these vaccines, which will be produced by early next year, will be given to countries in the Indo-Pacific, specifically the ASEAN countries. And under the Quad, of course, connectivity is another key agenda, given how the Chinese have been working on connectivity. But their connectivity has been criticized a lot by Delhi, by US, by other like-minded democratic countries on not being financially viable, creating debts. And there have been ample of examples, especially here in South Asia, with, of course, Sri Lanka standing out as well.